You're on.
Linda Christ of Linda Christ Insurance, and I specialize in all kinds of businesses, property and liability, workers' comp, general liability, and professional liability. And our main topic today is, and I'll answer any questions about what the coverages actually are, but our main topic today is independent contractor versus employee. And you all were the catalyst for actually me putting this down on paper, which I thought, why didn't I do this years ago? And it probably is one of the most misunderstood concepts of insurance. The principle behind it is has nothing to do with taxes. Why you have a 1099 versus W-2 person. And when I say 1099, I mean anyone that's considered that you 1099, that is a subcontractor, that works for a subcontractor, that might be, thank you so much, putting on a roof or painting one of your properties. And all of the things that you do that for, the reasons you do that is, okay, you don't need to hire a full-time roofer. You'll never be able to give them that much work, no matter how many properties you probably have. And there's lots of reasons from taxes, withholding taxes, whether you want to have another employee, benefits, all sorts of reasons. And insurance has nothing to do with any of that. And maybe part of the that could help you with this concept is workers' comp is the only, short of automobile, requiring automobile insurance, is the only insurance that is regulated. And it goes back, way back. I've heard political arguments over it, but it goes way back when employers mistreated employees with hours and pay, and it was started being regulated at that point. The child labor, all of that is part of it. And the workers' comp portion is regulated by the National Council on Compensation Insurance, and it is federally regulated, but then the McCarran-Ferguson Act brings it to state and, of course, Commonwealth control. So Virginia requires 3 or more employees to carry workers' comp. And owners count. Owners can exclude themselves, but it's 3 or more employees. The big question comes into what happens when you have an independent contractor. And the proper way to subcontract out for insurance purposes is if you subcontract to someone else who carries all their own insurance, and the insurance that is appropriate to their industry. And in some cases, this could even be professional liability. Let's say you had to hire an engineer or something for some reason. You want to sub out, and you don't want to take on their general liability or their workers' comp. So that independent contractor, to properly sub out, has to have all their own insurances. So what if they don't? The insurance is not trying to compete with what IRS says. Insurance is only saying if they do not have their own insurance while they are working on your job, while they're putting a roof on your house that you manage, you will be responsible for their work-related injury. So that's where it can get expensive. So the only way to make sure that they have their own insurance, and you can't just say you're required to carry insurance. You can't get them to sign a waiver or put it in a contract that it's required, and that be enough. You can do all of those things, but that's not enough. The best way is to collect a certificate of insurance that shows that they have both general liability and workers' comp. So what happens if they don't? It becomes very expensive to Wilkinson PM if they don't. Insurance companies know that, and it's so complex. So let's say an independent contractor is putting a roof on one of your homes and does not have their own insurance. They fall off the roof. You go, well, not our employees, an independent contractor. Your insurance, your insurance would decline coverage for that person. But then it's discovered that they do not have their own insurance. And then a claim will be brought against Wilkinson PM. Then their payroll gets added to your insurance costs. Property managers, salespeople, inside clerical support, and inside clerical support is anyone who doesn't go out in their car. It's not clerical per se. Is one of the lowest rates. And roofing is one of the highest rates.
Imagine that.
Can I ask you something?
Yes.
Those certificates of insurance, I mean, in this day and age, those could be complete BS. You could totally fake those, can't you? How
can't
is
really,
that
well,
different than them saying, showing that, hey, I do carry insurance in writing on anything?
Well, that they can fake that easier than they can fake a certificate of insurance. It is a form that is not easily duplicated. However, I heard an agent tell me that they have totally taken it outside their management system and put it in a document that they can repeat, because they have one client that requires 140 certificates, and they can better manage it outside of that document. But that's the best you can do.
Okay.
Can't do any better than that. Lots of things can happen after they give you that certificate,
Sure.
even if it's
They
for real.
cancel it, yeah.
They cancel it, and that is one of the difficulties in insuring handymen, carpenters, plumbers. They need a certificate to satisfy you. They buy the insurance. They send the certificate. They cancel the insurance. There are some, and I don't know that I recommend this, but there are some that require a certificate with each job. Now, if you have a suspicion that someone is doing that sort of thing, and you use them every so often, I would require a certificate another time. A year may not be adequate, but that's the best you can do, and you've done everything you can, and that certificate is part of your defense. But if it does it's not as much the owner, it's the employee of the owner or the helper that owner has hired that could bring a claim as well. Your defense in the court would be, and when you hear people are going to court on their workers' comp claim, it's that, and it's also disability-related things. So that certificate is the best you can do, and it's more likely that they will buy it and cancel it. But if you ask to be named as additional insured on that certificate, you should be notified when it cancels. It doesn't always happen, but you should be notified. So if someone canceled that, let's say it was someone I wrote, a roofer, which I don't write, but let's just say we gave a certificate with an additional insured, they cancel. It's my responsibility to tell the insurance company I sent out 5 different certificates to 5 entities where they were named additional insured, and the insurance company sends out the cancellation notice. But with that many people in a line, sometimes it gets overlooked, but it's the best you can do. So what if that person doesn't have the insurance, falls off the roof, gets injured? I'll give you a claim scenario, and this truly happened. It was a fellow I insured that just did basement and kitchen renovations. He was primarily a carpenter. He subbed out the plumbing and the electrical. Told me he never did any exterior work, never any additions, nothing in the line of, landscaping and building walls, nothing like that. But business was slow, and he needed a roof. And he hired a roofer under his business entity name. The 35-year-old man fell off the roof. This is before hip replacements became common, but he totally shattered his hip, 35 years old, had surgery, had a hip replacement. It was so shattered it didn't take well, had a second one. His overall medical bills were way over like $250,000. And then under workers' comp, there is like a payment based upon your disability, not to be confused with good disability insurance, but based upon the injury. So and he had a partial permanent disability. He will never put roofs on a house again. And so by the time all the payments were made, the physical therapy, the second surgery, it was a $500,000 claim. And the owner called me up and said, and there was a lot wrong with this scenario, right? It's his own roof. He shouldn't have been paying for it through the business. All of those things. But so he called me up when it happened, and he said, I know he doesn't have insurance. Is my insurance going to cover this? And I said, the good news is yes, and the bad news is yes. It'll be covered. It's going to be a very expensive claim. You hardly have any payroll. Your experience mod, which is how you compare to others in the industry, which how many kitchen remodelers fall like that and shatter a hip? And I said, in about 2 years, when the experience mod and everything catches up with you, you're going to call me up and you're going to curse me and tell me I'm putting you out of business. Of course, I'm not. It's the National Council on Compensation Insurance that promulgates that mod. But that's exactly what happened. Had to downsize to just him. Then he was subbing out, and I still don't think he really understood that he needed to get those certificates. And two things. It's usually the best employee, or I shouldn't say the employee, the best person for the job. They're the ones that show up, do the job, do it right the first time. Maybe they're even a little bit of a prima donna because they're so good. They're the ones that are not going to want to give you the certificate. So what do? You have to realize that the insurance company is going to pick up their payroll and rate accordingly. Plus, it makes your insurance marketplace more restrictive because there's only so many that do roofers. Yes?
Yeah, just so you guys know, for 10 years you've been telling me this, you've been telling this company the same thing over and over, and it didn't hit home for me until recently, because I always thought, well, our contractors are not going to be mean and sue us because they can, but it wasn't even that. You said something further than that. It's not even if they wanted to or not. It has to be done. The hospital's going to go to the insurance.
Yeah, oh, okay. You said there was something, and I couldn't figure out what part of it.
That was
Yes,
the
when
primary
you.
thing that got
So let's say you have that the roofer falls off. The ambulance took him away. This is exactly what happened. Goes to the emergency room. And I don't know if any of you have ever been involved in a car accident and they put you on that plank, to keep your head still. They start asking all their questions. Where are you going? Where are you coming from? Who are you visiting? I am so sorry. I have grandchildren named Valentine.
Great song.
And I thought I'd turn this off.
That's okay.
And so you get to the emergency room and they ask, is this an accident? Was this work related? And if you say yes, it's over as far as your health insurance is concerned. They want to know the name of your work comp carrier. Now, do people lie when they get to the emergency room? Yeah. But that's what ends up happening. And an insurance company, so was that the part that,
So if they say I don't have workers' comp, the next step is they contact the person that hired them, I guess.
right.
And that would be us.
And an employer employer is a loose term.
Yeah.
They do an employer's first report. So you're going to do an employer's first report on that independent contractor that fell off the roof that said he didn't have health insurance or said that this was work related.
Yeah.
Your insurance company is going to turn around and deny the claim because they're going to say they were an independent contractor. They're supposed to have their own insurance. Then you're going to panic. And then somewhere all the lawyers start coming in and it's discovered that there's no workers' comp on that. So they will go to wherever they can to find workers' comp, and that's back against you.
Or our owners.
Hmm?
Or
No.
our owners.
Yeah, well, the workers' comp. And there are some property management companies. So let's say that it's just Lee working alone, not required by law to carry workers' comp, has no employees, not required by law to carry workers' comp, and Lee is hiring independent contractors to put on paint, put on roofs, do electrical, do repairs. Someone gets hurt. He has no workers' comp insurance. Financially, he is still responsible for the work-related injury. And none of this is an issue until someone gets hurt. The other issue is when an audit is done. So you all have workers' comp. You tell the insurance company prior to the policy being issued and then at each renewal what your payroll is. If your payroll is consistent, they'll just renew automatically. Then at the end of the year, and it's an estimate of payroll, at the end of the year they do an audit. At the audit, they ask you for your federal reports, tax reports, and then they ask for the names of any independent contractors. If you say, oh, none, well, they know that's not true for property management, so they may turn around and come in and audit books. And also, if you say no, there aren't any, and there are, that's insurance fraud. But they will audit books. This is nothing like an IRS audit. Someone comes in, but they're asking you an entirely different set of questions. And they will pick up all of the independent contractors, and they'll be asked, what do they do? Oh, this one's a plumber. This one's an electrician. This one paints and cleans up after there's a turnover in tenant. Oh, this one puts on roofs. Then they'll ask you for certificates of insurance. And everyone's so busy that they'll ask for certificates of insurance, and sometimes that's forgotten until you get the audit. And, if you paid a roofer $10,000, now this is not materials. It is materials if you don't keep them separate. If you just pay a roofer $10,000 and you haven't separated the cost of materials and then the cost of labor, they're going to base it on the full $10,000. So, and then all of a sudden you get a huge audit, and you don't understand why. But this happens in lots of industries. And there are also mistakes that occur. I had an attorney, thank God he was just calling me for advice, who insured a home health care and companion. He was the lawyer for a home health care and companion company. It was a husband and wife, and they hired a part-time admin, and they bought workers' comp on 3 people. How that happened, I don't know. I mean, my insurance companies would never let me do that. You know, they'd ask if this part-time person is the one providing the services. Who's providing the services? Well, they're all independent contractors. So they had, and the husband and wife were inside keeping the books. One was inside, one was outside developing business. They got an audit, and they were very small. They got an audit for $9,000, and what they did is they picked up all the payroll for all the 1099s that actually provided the health care and home companion. And when you've paid less than $1,000 for, well, much less than $1,000 for a clerical, a salesperson, and an admin, which is considered a clerical, and then the rate for home health care and home nurses is much higher. They are very subject to knee injuries and back injuries, very subject, because they've been taught if someone's falling, you shove the bed against, you know, whatever wall you can. You use your knee, and they're hurt quite frequently. So this happens across every industry. So then you get this audit, and you start scurrying around to try to get certificates from all your subcontractors, and then you find out they don't have insurance. Then you find out they've gone out of business. Then you found out they were doing side work. They had no insurance, and you're stuck with that audit. And so when is that audit done? So your insurance, let's just say, is May 1 to May 1. In April, you get your renewal, which is the next May 1 to May 1. About mid-May to June, an insurance company starts contacting you to do the audit. And you're not answering, right? You're not answering because you're busy. And this is a pain in the neck. You don't quite even understand. And then they do the audit. And by the way, if you don't return the call, they'll double your payroll and call it an estimated audit and send you a bill. That gets your attention. Then you do the audit. I spend more time straightening out audit messes, and I don't mean my clients. The insurance companies can make some messes too. I spend more time on audits than I probably do anything else. And it doesn't matter whether it's a construction account, property management, or a tech account. The only thing that's different is the rate is a whole lot less. But you have a tech account that has millions in payroll and $1 million is subcontracted. It still hurts, you know, especially if they're, you know, in a growth process and they're hiring employees and subs both. Now, why would they hire subs? Because they don't have, this is a particular project, and they need 10 people for this project, and they don't know how long it's going to last. So they hire a sub. If the contract gets renewed, and now we have an annual contract, they usually will turn around and hire them as employees. So let's see if I've gotten, and I've only mentioned work comp here. It also applies to general liability. Yes?
Question on workers' comp, because Teresa hit on it about potential liability for our clients. I think we're absorbing that liability by hiring the contractor. So in the respect that you've been talking, they don't have liability for the contractor not having workers' comp.
So let's say that I am the wife of a young roofer, and we have 3 children. And that roofer falls off a roof, and suddenly there's no insurance. Who gets sued?
Everybody.
So the owner of the house gets sued as well.
But let's say you go all the way to the
But-
end. Most likely, we're going to be the ones that
Yes.
suffer the most because we didn't make sure that they didn't have workers' comp.
Right.
That they did have workers'
Right.
comp.
And the payer
Right.
was paid by Wilkinson Property
Right.
Management, not the owner of the property.
Right.
And our client can say, well, at least Wilkinson PM did their job, or at least I'm not paying for them not doing their job.
That's true.
I just looked up how many vendors we have in our system, hopefully not all active, 1,340.
Mhm.
And I don't think we have a certificate on each one, although we have 3 of these behind me.
Do you mind
Three
if
of
I,
these.
do you have one certificate there?
Sure.
So who's collecting the certificates? Are each of you collecting certificates?
No, that would be
Just
Susie
Susie
reception.
usually.
Okay,
Camera, 3 of these.
so let's just look at one of these certificates.
Skip that one.
Okay. So, well, this is odd. This isn't a certificate. They sent a copy of their declaration page. And this is just liability. There's
Yeah,
no-
these are gonna be both the
Right.
liability and the workers' comp, and we only ask for declaration page. Should we be asking for something
This,
else?
this is a certificate.
Oh, I got you.
And see, work performed by the
That's what
named
I know.
insured, right? That's good. And if you ask to be additional insured, that's even better.
Does that cost the?
No. Well, I say no, but if you've had to go to a specialty market to get insurance because your insurance is difficult to place, it may cost. But
Is it significant or
no,
not?
$100, and it's for
That could be
The year.
significant if you're a contractor and you have 20 companies. You're talking about
right.
$2,000.
But all we
not
care
$100.
All we care about is Wilkinson PM.
No, I know.
The other 19 probably aren't collecting certificates and getting the appropriate. This one is fabulous. They have general liability. They have auto liability. So why would you want auto liability? If they are even using their personal truck and they're on a job site doing business, and they hit someone in the parking lot, there's an auto liability exposure. Umbrella, that's not a requirement. They're showing here that they have property, and a dishonesty bond is good too. So if you have someone that's going into a home where someone is living, and they have jewelry and stuff, and something gets stolen, more importantly, what I find is it doesn't get stolen. Somebody thinks it got stolen.
Yeah.
And I can't give you the number of, I can go on and on, but cleaning companies, the homeowner took a necklace off in the middle of the night, went to put it on their nightstand, missed. The cleaning company, when they were cleaning, didn't see it, pushed it all the way under the bed, and the cleaning company stole the necklace. There are teenagers who have guests where the guest stole it. But if you have a dishonesty bond, then you can turn around and say, I just can't imagine any of our people. We really vet them, we know them. I can't imagine any of our people, but don't worry. We have coverage for that. You report it to the police, and we'll report it to our bonding company. That prevents that chronic complainer who just can't find the necklace. They're going to really search for it first. And more times than not, I've really only had one true employee dishonesty claim. And of course, there was a drug addiction involved with that person, and they were stealing stuff. But the majority are something's misplaced. You think it, how many times have me and glasses, how many times have you just know you left your glasses there or know you left your keys there, and they're not there, but they're somewhere else.
Some
So-
very important place.
Right.
Or a very secure place.
Be
Yeah.
kept nice and safe.
So let me just make sure I understand what you just said about that. So before we or this company would file a claim or report it to their insurance company, you need the aggrieved party to have reported it to the
Right.
police and maybe get some
And
code
send a
number
copy
from
of the
police first.
police report. This certificate is only for general liability. Now, I'm going all the way back. This starts at 2010, so. This one is great, but now remember there's policy periods and terms, and they're a year. So when they expire, you need to get a new one.
They pop up in our system that they've expired,
See,
or
that's-
they're about to, and I
That's
usually
fabulous.
let
Most
Susie
people
know.
go to get those certificates when the auditor's on their way. I can't tell you the number of certificates I do for my clients, and they say the auditor's gonna be here in 2 hours, I need a certificate. Okay.
So an independent contractor who works by himself needs workman's compensation insurance, is that right?
For you. They are not required by law to carry workers' comp insurance, and that's the argument you're gonna get. I work alone. Commonwealth of Virginia does not require me to carry workers' comp insurance.
Okay.
That's the argument, but it is a ticket to do business with you.
Okay.
I have a management consultant that has a $5 million umbrella, and it's crazy. I mean, she works alone, her revenues, it was hard to get her a $5 million umbrella with revenues from one person. But it's her biggest account. It's been ongoing for years. And when she tried to negotiate it, they said, if you want to work with us, that's the cost. That's the cost of doing business with us.
Next question is, what does it cost? What's the average cost for a regular handyman?
For handymen, it's expensive.
That's what I keep hearing, but I never hear
It
a
is
cost.
expensive. And to just rattle
Just
them off.
just out of curiosity.
But right now, I'm doing a company that hauls junk. You wouldn't think that's too bad, right? They only have a pickup and a trailer.
I've seen
You
some
hurt.
junks. I don't know.
Okay.
Heavy stuff.
It's three owners. One's clerical, one's sales, one does the hauling, and a part-time employee, and it's $7,000. Almost $8,000.
But for an individual, that's what I'm kind of curious about.
Well,
'cause I know we have
so there's a minimum payroll figure. So another thing you do is, right, you try to take all these expenses so you don't have to, pay taxes and stuff like that. And so your payroll, some people don't draw payroll at all. Some people draw $250,000. There's a minimum and maximum. And what kind of legal entity it is depends on what that minimum and maximum is. But we're talking thousands. General liability is probably hundreds. That's why a lot of them have general
right,
liability.
exactly.
But workers' comp is thousands. A roofer, a lot. And they say, well, what? I'm never going to bring a work comp claim against myself. But that's the ticket to do business. Otherwise, they're going to bring a work comp claim against you all.
So is that, say a roofer just starts his business. So the first year, it might be a $10,000 or $20,000?
If it's just,
To
see,
get
that's
it
why I
started.
hate
Yeah.
to say a cost.
But my question I'm getting to is that a declining figure? So if you go for 3 years and there's no claims, then would your next bill
It's
maybe be
the
less?
biggest, no,
No.
not in workers'
Oh,
comp. It is
okay.
in professional. It can be in general liability. But the biggest factor in workers' comp is payroll. That's what it's based off. So when I waffle, if you're sole proprietor, an LLC, or an S Corp or C Corp, the payroll figure used is all different. It goes from 26 to 51.8. So, it can be different. So to just rattle it off. I'm better at the rates. A roofer can be as high as $22 per 100 of payroll.
See, I don't worry about roofers because all the roofers that we work with are large enough companies where it's not going to be an issue. It's the small guy,
Handyman.
the handyman who work by themselves is the problems because we try to stick with these guys to keep costs down for our owners, but we can't have it both ways.
Right,
So that's my concern.
right. So a handyman working alone is probably $2,000-$3,000 maybe
Per year.
per year. Depends on whether the insurance company is looking at him as a carpenter. But have you ever had a handyman put in a sump pump? Would you say?
Probably.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, handyman,
I
they
just-
do a lot of things. Yeah,
Right,
so-
they do everything.
Yeah, yeah,
Everything. Cleaning gutters, up on roofs,
Exactly.
they
Up on
do
roofs,
everything.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the problem. I
Replacing
really
windows.
don't have a decent market for handymen. It used to all go in the carpentry classification until they caught on. But I had a handyman put in a sump pump, and that big windstorm and everything, that was a few Fridays ago, the basement flooded, and now that person's being sued. And he put in the sump pump that the owner bought.
Purchased, okay.
And he says, well, I would have never used that kind of sump pump. The owner went into whatever, Lowe's, Home Depot, and bought this sump pump.
But wouldn't this general insurance
It's
is,
general liability. But my point is, you know, the claims really, really happen.
Yeah.
And you can go on for years, and it doesn't hurt you, and then something happens. The issue is an injury
Mhm.
or an audit. And
Why would they sue the contractor and not just file a homeowner's claim?
the homeowner's insurance, they did that. They did that. And the homeowner's insurance company came against the contractor. So he has.
A new insurance company.
No,
Yeah,
they all do that.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
They all do that. Well, shouldn't the damages fall with the person who is responsible?
No, it's like saying the guy that hammered the nail and the wood failed.
Well,
You know.
but we don't know that
Yeah.
that it was
I know.
Right.
Yeah.
Push
right.
it to the next
If
step.
insurance companies didn't subrogate, your cost of insurance, whether it be auto or home, would be double or triple. You know, when any sort of work is done, so if you get hit by a car and you go to your insurance company to pay for your repairs, they're going to subrogate. So they have people that's all they do all day long, and they're rather good at it. So it was actually the insurance company that subrogated. So this one does not have workers' comp, and it's an environmental services. So I'm kind of guessing they might do water remediation, maybe. There's no workers' comp, and there's no professional. They have a $5 million umbrella, but there's no workers' comp and no professional. Now, these all are very old, so I'm sure that's not the case anymore. And limits aren't, believe it or not, as important as knowing they have the coverage. You always like to see $1 million, and on workers' comp, there's an employer's liability that could even be 100, 500, 100. As long as they have the coverage, that's the most important thing. Because how many general liability, I mean, if you had a sump pump fail and it exceeds $500,000, that house floated away, you know. So usually $500,000 will be enough.
What are the minimums for the general liability and the workers' comp? Do you have?
I would say general liability should be $500,000. I'd prefer to see $1 million. And workers' comp, see here on this workers' comp. So under workers' comp, Part A pays all the medical bills. Part B is if the employee sues rather than collecting workers' comp, which is never going to happen. It is because negligence has to be proven. Where it does happen is not what we're big in right now is manufacturing. I'm the employer and I take the safety guard off because you can produce twice as much without that safety guard. And you lose a hand. I'm grossly negligent. And maybe you're going to sue rather than collect workers' comp. But in this category, each accident would be 100, each employee would be 100, policy limit would be 500. That's the minimum.
100, 100, 500?
Yeah. And I know, I see here, everyone's always, it's important for them to get the W-9s,
Oh,
and
yes.
that's important too. And sometimes they get through they get that W-9, so now I can pay them, and then that certificate never comes. And if a sub is saying to you, and remember, 1099, subcontractor, all those words are used interchangeably. Don't pay them. Don't. First of all, you shouldn't let them do the work, because if they fall off the roof, that's one thing. But you just don't pay them until they get their certificate of insurance, because you will never get it after you pay them. Never.
Linda, just for bookkeeping purposes and or for auditing purposes, is it better to, what would you suggest we do with the ones that have expired? They're probably no longer in business or not using those, but if the certificate, if that's an old
Yes.
certificate,
You could actually, these are all 14, 12, 11.
'Cause
I
most of ours
almost,
are all scanned
yeah,
in
I
to
would
the computer now.
keep and you've already had the audit. I always have to think about this. For the 16, 17, no. I always get confused about this. I would keep the year you're in and the year prior to make sure. These actually can be tossed. I mean, you'd be hiring an attorney if an insurance company came back and said, I want to see your certificates from 2011.
so now they're scanned and they're saved in the cloud, so. is
You
it
don't need
easier
these
to-
at all.
Okay.
Don't need these at all.
You got a reminder now.
And, what? This is a job.
Yeah,
This is a really hard job to keep these all straight. And, you know, you contact your subs when it expires. They don't respond. If they're dragging their feet and
Yeah.
saying that, oh, my insurance agent is
Yeah,
taking
get
2
one.
weeks,
Yeah.
they don't have insurance. A day or two is max, but I do certificates in the evenings because it's easier to do them than it is to remember to do it tomorrow. So if I see it pop in my email, I just do them. So they're dragging their feet if it means they don't have insurance. They might or might not be trying to get insurance. See, this one's great, has both. But for someone, you know, when you talk about forging this document, for someone, let's say they have GL, to turn around and add workers' comp to that document, this can be sent as a PDF, but they're very hard to edit. They're very hard. It's not like a motor vehicle record is easier, but this
I
is
don't
hard.
know.
Do
I
they
can-
do it?
I can edit a PDF anytime I want. There's nothing to that.
So let's
I'm
test
just
this,
saying, I don't care.
okay? Test this and see what it looks like.
Go ahead, Don.
You know, see what
Sure,
it looks
I'll
like.
Fire one.
And if it's two different
How much you want?
font and size and all
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
you know.
You can tell,
But
Yeah, you click on the
yeah,
font,
because
tells you what
most
it
of
is.
them come from,
But you vetted. Now I know sometimes you're in a rush and the roofer you want I keep using roofer, but the roofer you want is not available and maybe you use someone new. But pretty much you've vetted them and you know them.
Yeah.
So, and they also know if they cheat on this, man, they just lost a really good employer.
And if they did something fraudulently, it seems like our litigious lawyers could have a case against them if they try to sue
Yes.
us.
Yes, that would be your stance. Well, wait a minute. I have this. And then we're talking insurance fraud on their part, and it all kinds of sort of ends.
Yeah, so, or we'd be safer anyway.
Right.
If that happened, we'd still a little bit safer than.
So I want to
having
make
anything.
sure.
What about like people cleaning houses, like just a maid service that might use 2 people?
They're not
Maybe.
required to carry
Not
workers' comp,
required, I mean,
but they should have
I mean,
it.
are they gonna have, that's gonna be like $5,000 or $6,000
The
for them,
purpose of
right?
this meeting is to put the fear into you, like it was put into me over and
Right.
over and over, until finally I'm like, fine, okay.
Don't think about the subcontractor, think about Wilkinson PM,
Yeah.
and think about you.
Where you're-
I insure 2 cleaning companies.
No.
One pays $5,000 for workers' comp. The other doesn't carry workers' comp at all because she refuses to insure her subcontractors.
Yep.
So the one that doesn't have workers' comp is cheaper, no doubt about it. It's about a third cheaper because, you know, they each discuss, you know, rates, and I know them through networking. And the one that has insurance, you know, keeps complaining about the difficulty of competing with those that don't. Your best, cheapest handyman does not have insurance. Guy working alone. Your best carpenter probably doesn't have insurance, and you want to use them.
But what it's gonna mean is that for a lot of times when we've got small jobs that need to be done, some of these larger companies are gonna charge you sometimes a minimum, you know, to do something that maybe a small guy's gonna charge $50 for. And then you're gonna have owners that don't do anything about it, but then you're gonna have owners that's gonna say, hey, it's crazy for me
Right.
to have to pay $150 to fix something that should have cost $50. We're not gonna have a choice.
Right.
So,
Well, and you tell your owner, well, if he gets hurt on your property, Wilkinson PM has a problem and you have a problem. I don't know that you are assuming the liability. Yes, I don't know if I would tell the owner that. You know,
but, well, I'm glad-
especially if the owner says, "I don't want you to use someone."
Yeah.
I'm glad-
Then they're taking it back.
They do
I'm
that.
sorry.
I'm glad you said that because what I can also see happening in some cases, which already happens now sometimes, is that owners have contractors of their own that they know that can do the job for much cheaper. So where does that put us?
I still think you should. You're paying them, right? Are you
No,
writing
no,
the
no,
check?
because in this case,
Okay.
we're gonna make the owner pay it. But
Exactly.
That's perfect.
should we have a concern?
Yeah, no, Gene was trying to come up with a compromise there.
I don't think there is a concern.
Well, my concern would be that now we have no control whatsoever, except that
Exactly.
we're on that lease as managing that
Do you
property.
get the, I would have the owner sign a total release.
Excellent letter.
A total release of all liability. I don't mind using your guy, but we're totally
We
released
need
of
to-
all general liability, work-related injuries,
We need to discuss that because I do.
quality of work.
Yeah, because I do get that question a lot of times from owners, potential owners, about having their own people do work because,
That's always fine as long as they're properly licensed and insured.
well, they're not going to be a lot of times. That's what I'm getting at. So,
That's
I say
why
it's
you
always
hire
fine if they
us,
are properly
right?
licensed and
That's
insured.
why you hire us. So we know your workmen are properly licensed and insured. But if you want to do this, you
a
know,
lot of them
I'm
don't
not
care
going to
because
fight you.
that's what they're doing usually for their own residents.
In
they've
fact,
got-
I
yeah.
would
Yeah.
be not at all involved in that transaction. I wouldn't set it up.
That's right.
And I wouldn't, I don't know what you do to make sure the work was done right. If you do any sort of inspections, I would do nothing
Right.
as far as that job is concerned. But what a waste of your time and money, Mr. Homeowner. You know, that's what you hired us for. Yeah, I have a little, getting ready to put a little garden down the side. I've only been in my house a year. Down the side of the house, and the paint on the foundation is kind of whacked up from weed whackers and stuff like that. And how am I going to hire to do this? Finding somebody to do this is hard enough, right? So I have, and I was given a referral by someone who is just perfect. They don't even have email. So if they don't have email, they don't have a certificate of insurance.
That's absolutely.
You know, and it's just a name. It's not, you know, Smith Handyman. General liability versus workers' comp. What's the difference? General liability is bodily injury or property damage to a third party. That's your owner. That's your home owner, or investment property owner. It excludes a work-related injury. Workers' comp excludes third-party injury. So workers' comp is strictly the person doing the work, normally an employee. General liability is to the owner, so that sump pump. If my guy had gotten his hand cut, and he did have a very severe cut once upon a time, if he got his hand cut installing that sump pump, that's work comp. If the sump pump fails, and how many sump pumps failed in that big storm? You know, and your big question is, was it the sump pump or was it installed properly? And they'll be able to determine that. And so his insurance company, my company, not me, everyone always thinks the agents are the companies. I'm always referred to as an insurance company. I'm an insurance agent, I'm an insurance broker. Hartford, Travelers, Liberty Mutual, they're the insurance companies. And when somebody starts, testing, is this covered, is this covered, is this covered, there's all kinds of exclusions and conditions in a policy. And the most difficult one, I always say I'm not a claims adjuster. I'm a salesperson. I can help you interpret the forms. Let's look for the exclusion. But the most difficult one is water. You know, is it driving water that comes in under a door? Not covered. Is it a flood? Not covered. Is it a broken pipe or a failed sump pump? Covered. Is mold covered? Well, that's a whole nother story. How long, my husband used to be a claims adjuster for Allstate. That's the only part of insurance I haven't done, and he's done that, and he does business development. And his thing was, he always had a pencil with him. And if he could stick that pencil through the floor, the molding, the trim, it's been there a long time. That is not a sudden, an accidental thing. So mold is an impossible. And why is it so impossible? Because it is so expensive. Any insurance company is going to try to avoid that sort of claim. Can you imagine what the insurance costs for people who don't do remediation? Big time. Big time. Plus they need to have professional liability for the environmental. What if they missed mold? And you bring your family back into the home and someone has an allergy and it creates an asthma attack. There's all sorts of things. So have I scared you enough? Any questions? Any other
Feel
questions?
underinsured.
Ask Mary if she has any questions.
Mary?
Yes.
Oh, I
Any
forgot somebody
questions?
was here. Do you have any questions?
No.
Your area has a lot of water-related stuff.
Yes, it does.
And it actually played a role in how many markets I could go to for that shopping center.
Oh, okay.
Just for the fear of
Too
wind.
close to the water level.
And wind, and the water level, and the ability for the ground to absorb water, even though you're really not right up against the water.
Yeah.
So,
Right. There's definitely some lower lying areas that the water table's high, and there's
Right.
some basements, and then there's some where people have basements and the water level is fine.
right. We even have that in our neighborhood. Some basements flood and some don't. And it's not a function of the builder.
Yeah.
So, and my phone number is on this piece of paper, but do not hesitate to call me if you have any questions or concerns. Do not hesitate to, who collects the certificates? Is that you? No.
Susie.
Do not hesitate to send one to me and say, does this have what it needs? Don't hesitate. That's what I'm here for. So,
Well, it's nice to know the limits too. so that we can,
You know what,
Tell them
would you
what we
like
want.
me to send a sample certificate?
that would be great.
I'll do that.
Yeah.
I'll do that, a sample certificate. And then you can send that off to,
So
Can
which
you
is,
use that?
the certificate is preferable to the declarations page?
yes. Yes. Yes, because they gotta go back to their agent
To
and get the agent to do a certificate of insurance. Which means an agent does not do a certificate of insurance if something's been canceled. Now, that doesn't mean if somebody sent you a declaration page, they're messing with you. It just means maybe they don't know.
Right, but if Wilkinson PM has just been added on as additionally insured, that would be on the declaration page also.
No.
It isn't.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Some have a blanket additional insured endorsement, so they don't have to go back to the insurance company every time and physically be added. That's why, if you have a blanket endorsement, the agent has to tell the insurance company how many certificates they did, name, address, the whole 9 yards, showing additional insured if someone got canceled for non-payment. Yes.
Question relating more to like tenant insurance. So we don't really have a hard bottom number that we require for them.
Uh-huh.
Do you have a recommendation on what that minimum
Insurance
should be?
companies often do, so that's,
I've seen a huge range.
there is a huge
Someone
range.
actually gave me one. It was like $5,000. I'm like, there's no
Right.
way you have $5,000 worth of personal belongings.
Right.
I said, just for your own benefit, you need to call them and.
Yeah,
and
I would say, so you're talking about single family house, a condo, one person living in a condo, probably 15 or, oh, just think about the electronics.
Yeah.
Your kid has has $25,000 worth of electronics.
My son just had a hot water line burst, rupture at 5 o'clock in the morning last month. His insurance claim was either 4 or 5,000
Yeah,
by the time we added everything up.
I would say
That's
25.
1 bedroom, 1
Yeah.
bath.
Okay.
And I would ask them to carry, they can carry a very low general liability limit. But I would ask for 300 is low. I would ask for $500,000 there.
300 to 5, okay,
Yeah, I would say $500,000.
I mean,
okay.
I've seen those costs on those policies range anywhere from like $120 to $280.
Right.
The range is incredible.
Right.
It is incredible.
Hmm.
It is.
Really depends if they have a lot of jewelry, electronics, that sort of thing.
And the limit,
Firearms.
What about it?
fire. There are limits under these policies for some of that stuff. And then you add floaters.
What about owner fire policies? The limits for them?
Well, the cost to rebuild the house and their loss of rental income. A condo, talk about confusion. When there's a master condo policy, and literally all you, first of all, you're not required to carry insurance at all, because the master condo policy will pay for it. But you have a you have a liability responsibility. So you might want to put, I tend to put $25,000 to $50,000 in business personal property, because maybe you're responsible for the carpet, the walls, hot water heater, HVAC. But I just spoke last week to an agent who writes an owner condo policy for the full value of the property that would impact you. So if the condo's worth, in this case, it was worth 400 and something.
Mine's not.
And he had a full $400 worth of building coverage and no contents. And his argument, so this is an agent who's selling this to, and this was his own policy because he owned his own condo. And he showed me, and he said, because what if the condo policy's canceled for non-payment? And I can't tell you how many times that happens. Non-payment non-payment can be, you don't know how many times somebody's insurance cancels because they didn't pay. Sometimes it's travel, sometimes it's, I have one guy who keeps changing bookkeepers, and there's always a mess every time he changes the bookkeepers. Makes me wonder, right? What's the problem here? Who's the common denominator? But there's a couple weeks in there where, he's pending cancellation, then he's in cancellation. So, and you don't know that about your master condo policy. You don't know that they're keeping up. One of the things with the cost to rebuild, you all probably know much more about the cost to rebuild than the association that manages your overall condo. So who's to say? They want to keep the condo fees down to make the condo owners happy. One way to keep the condo fees down is not to increase the limit over the years. So, but all really would be some property inside and some liability. And banks don't understand that at all. Right?
But talking about the owner of a condominium unit that you rent out, so just the.
Right.
So just that policy, you would want the liability replacement for the contents and rent replacement coverage.
Right. You always want to make sure there's rental income replacement. Because if there's damage, you want to get paid. And just because, there's damage in it, they can't live in it, doesn't necessarily mean that they stop paying rent, right? They still have a mortgage,
That's true. For both tenant insurance and owner fire policies, would we want Wilkinson to be on as additional insurance?
You can't do that on
Additional interest,
personal.
right?
You can't, and that won't happen on a personal policy. It's different on commercial lines, but they won't add a
I get it
property
on a
management.
tenant policy.
We got
Additional-
lots of owners.
Yeah,
You get
Additional
that. I haven't
interest.
done personal lines in a
additional
long time.
interest. I don't know about
Yeah.
insured, no one ever seems to do that
It
for
seems like
tenants.
there's fewer owner policies where they're allowed to put us on as additionally insured, but everyone that I've talked to so far, it's additional interest. If you
Yeah.
can't do additional
Huh.
interest.
Yeah.
Okay. The more of that you can do, the better.
Okay.
Will State Farm
And actually, it says in
or
the
any
property
of the
management agreement, it
companies
has to
that
be
you know
additional
of
insured.
list us as additional insured on the homeowners? The
Insured
landlord.
ward interest, doesn't it? Or the
Frankly,
lease.
if they're
No, it
doing
says
it,
additional
the
insurance.
agent that's issuing it is really making a mistake.
Yeah, because there's
Right, I mean,
no
for-
actual,
I think the lease.
we don't have any
tenants
financial
is-
interest on the
Sure.
property.
Exactly.
Therefore, the
Exactly.
indemnity rule is pretty much.
Where
violated.
this should be straightened out and be clear is on your contract with the owners.
Yeah.
That you are representing them.
Yeah, because I've actually seen people give us a deck page, not a deck certificate or deck page, whatever it is we get at the time from them, where it actually lists as additional insured, and I thought that violated the indemnity rule. Which is-
No, you're
So it's like-
thinking, and that's more people don't know that than do. To be added on like a mortgagee,
Right.
you have to have a financial interest in that house.
Right.
So if that house burns to the ground, you're out of money. Additional insured is the liability piece. Additional payee or lost payee. Sometimes you hear lender, lost payee, mortgagee, lost payee. You have to have a financial interest in that home. That's why you're more likely to be able to get an additional insured, but then somebody's making a mistake,
Yeah, that was,
actually.
yeah, exactly.
So, if it's confusing to insurance agents and brokers, doesn't surprise you that it's confusing.
So the best we can do
Completely.
is just be listed as additional interest, so that we know when. the
Right,
policy-
additional insured. Additional insured is ultimately
On the
the
management
best
agreement.
way.
Because the management agreement actually says that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But no, but I mean, so when we,
If you can get it on the policy.
If you can get on the policy.
Additional insured. I think Patrick wanted me to talk a little bit about your other insurance coverages. Did you not want me to talk a little bit about other insurance coverages that Wilkinson PM has? Like the errors and omissions?
You can. I don't
Okay,
know
I
how
thought
much
you said
interest do we
that.
have.
I thought-
You actually told me that.
Not one.
Errors and omissions would be a good topic just to quickly cover. I don't
Right.
know if there's anything anyone else wants to
Yeah,
know about.
that's the primary difference. Is an errors and omissions is just that, error, omission, and sometimes you see the word wrongful act, right? And it's a mistake that you've made, or more importantly, a mistake somebody perceives that you have made. Your industry in particular, it's important to have things like discrimination, and we have discrimination on your policy, so that if somebody says something and about school systems, and there's all sorts of things you can say inappropriately, as we all know, right, from politics. The other thing that's important on your professional liability policy is when Wilkinson PM manages a piece of property that you are financially involved in, right? So you've got a couple of investment properties. That can be considered a conflict of interest, and there's an endorsement that takes that conflict away, because it's well understood you're going to manage your own properties. But, so that particular type of insurance has gotten extremely complex. You used to either have it or not, and now there are all these multiple endorsements that can be added. That's all industries. That's across the board. Cyber's another. Cyber liability is another exposure, so, but,
That
And
was
Linda,
just
with-
mentioned in here.
With E&O insurance, possibly the most important thing for the people here to understand is that if there's going to be a problem, E&O insurance needs to be contacted immediately.
Immediately.
And not after you try and mediate the problem or try and work
exactly.
around the
I'm
problem
so
or
glad
hide
you
the
said
problem
that.
with something else.
I had a client call me and she says, I'm sitting in my attorney's office and we're getting ready to write a check to someone who's brought a suit against us for $15,000, and we actually would prefer if the insurance company wrote the check. They negotiated this, the insurance company walked away from it, this had been going on, so notifying right away, yes. And there is first of all, notifying Patrick and Lee, or Patrick or Lee, depending on, who's handling that sort of thing. Notifying me, and then in turn notifying the insurance company. You can have a conversation with me separate from notifying the insurance company, because I'm not a State Farm agent, I'm an independent agent. You can actually talk to me. But when it comes time to report, and these reports, so you can report an incident, but it's not really a suit. So an insurance company isn't going to defend you until it becomes a suit, because it may just go away. But, so
I think the reason we don't call insurance is because
We're
we
scared.
all assume it's going to go up the very next time we get a bill. Oh,
Right.
you use your insurance, therefore it has to go up.
And, you see that in auto. There used to be a thing, it's not that way anymore, that if you have an auto accident, you can count on a 15 or 20% increase. But it's not that way. It's all the years of not having a claim that is to your advantage. And when a claim does arise, it's important to get an insurance company in there early, because the majority of claims, I always say the insurance is the shoulda, woulda, coulda. When someone says, if you would have told me that, you should have known. If I could have done this, but none of us have a crystal ball. So I find the majority of professional liability claims are just hurt feelings. Now, do they pay out? Yes. They defend, but the majority of them do go away. Unless you're a structural engineer. That one might not go away. But, and in the same way, there's a real uptake now on employee-related, and, keep in mind all your independent contractors claims now with all that's going on in the news. So, also just keep in mind your any sort of wrongdoing is in the eyes of the receiver, not in the eyes of the doer. So keeping in mind lines that should not be crossed. Yes.
I love your comment that many suits are really just caused by hurt feelings.
Mhm.
So you're saying really that a conversation.
A good conversation, face-to-face conversation, not over the phone and not in email. Because how many times I don't like the tone of your email. Hello? There is no tone. A good face-to-face. And the longer your relationships and the longer you've had people as your clients, the more likely, it's fear-based. All that anger and all that, it's fear-based. It's, oh my God, this is happening. It's going to cost me thousands. That's the fear base behind it, but yes.
Yeah. Any other questions for Linda? Last chance. Thank you very much.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
so much for coming.
Oh, you're welcome.